The sovereign nation of Coldwind existed less as a recognized entity on any polished map, and more as a feverish legend whispered among travelers. It was a place where winter was less a season and more a permanent, bitter dominion. Its heart was a vast, unforgiving expanse, centered around a singular anomaly, a mountain, unnaturally and perpetually verdant green, rising like a massive emerald against the backdrop of an endless iron-gray sky. This green mountain was the territorial domain of a clan of beings known simply as the Icehooks. They were not merely beasts, nor simply men. The Icehooks were creatures forged in a primal, unsettling fusion. They possessed the immense, shambling bulk and protective, shaggy coat of the mythical Bigfoot, yet this form was interwoven with the lean, lethal musculature and unsettlingly canine features of a werewolf caught eternally mid-transformation. Their existence was the raw, jagged edge of Coldwind's wilderness. Stories from the closest human settlement, a perpetually fearful village clinging to the region's edge, painted the Icehooks not just as dangerous predators, but as savage, intelligent monsters who hunted and killed for pure sport, a horrific form of entertainment. The first rule, the oldest law passed down through generations, was absolute: never travel to the mountain alone. To do so was to court certain disappearance, to be abducted, dragged into the silent, frozen dark, and consumed by creatures whose nature was defined by their appetite for flesh. The Icehooks were the reason Coldwind held its breath, the reason every midnight shadow felt too deep. It was under this looming psychological threat that a small, nervous delegation of villagers found themselves walking the treacherous boundary near the mountain's timberline. Their leader was Mark, a man whose jaw was set in a way that telegraphed both his ambition and his fear. He stopped abruptly, his boots crunching loudly on the earthen earth, and his voice cut the tension like a dull knife. The sovereign nation of Coldwind existed less as a recognized entity on any polished map and more as a feverish legend whispered among travelers. It was a place where winter was less a season and more a permanent, bitter dominion. Its heart was a vast, unforgiving expanse centered around a singular anomaly, a mountain, unnaturally and perpetually verdant green, rising like a massive emerald against the backdrop of an endless iron-gray sky. This green mountain was the territorial domain of a clan of beings known simply as the Icehooks. They were not merely beasts, nor simply men. The Icehooks were creatures forged in a primal, unsettling fusion. They possessed the immense, shambling bulk and protective, shaggy coat of the mythical Bigfoot, yet this form was interwoven with the lean, lethal musculature and unsettlingly canine features of a werewolf caught eternally mid-transformation. Their existence was the raw, jagged edge of Coldwind's wilderness. Stories from the closest human settlement, a perpetually fearful village clinging to the region's edge, painted the Icehooks not just as dangerous predators, but as savage, intelligent monsters who hunted and killed for pure sport, a horrific form of entertainment. The first rule, the oldest law passed down through generations, was absolute: never travel to the mountain alone. To do so was to court certain disappearance, to be abducted, dragged into the silent, frozen dark, and consumed by creatures whose nature was defined by their appetite for flesh. The Icehooks were the reason Coldwind held its breath, the reason every midnight shadow felt too deep. Mark's voice, though strained and tight, sliced through the frigid air. "All right, we're here." He spoke the words as if arriving were the victory, not the dangerous prelude. His gaze didn't rest, it nervously darted, sweeping the shadowy woods with a palpable, sickening unease. "Begin setting up the camp, 10 minutes flat," he barked, the arbitrary deadline proof of his frantic panic. "I don't need to remind any of you that these woods are less than friendly to trespassers like us." He desperately tried to project authority, but the nervous tremor beneath his command was a betrayal. It confirmed every grim local superstition, every terrifying truth about the Icehooks. For Mark, This insane speed was their only viable, flimsy shield against the profound silence and the cold that seemed ready to swallow them whole. The moment of focused fear was violently shattered before a single tent pole was secured. Roger, a stout man whose face was a mask of simmering resentment and sheer fatigue, dropped a bundle of rope and interrupted Mark's orders with an exasperated, thick-throated protest. He thrust a hand, trembling with fury, toward the menacing dark woods. "What in the frozen hell are we doing here, Mark?" he demanded, his voice thick with a profound sense of betrayal. "You swore this would be a short trip, a perimeter search. We've been hiking for hours. We agreed to look for the missing farmers, that's it. We never signed up to establish a base camp practically on the Icehook's doorstep. This isn't a search, this is a siege." Roger's outburst was the spark. It ignited the group's bottled-up terror, forcing them to confront the terrifying, unstated objective that Mark had so carelessly dragged them toward. "It won't take long," Mark quickly countered, the denial sounding hollow even to his own ears. He took a hesitant step toward Roger, trying to regain control. "The farmers should be around here. We've already searched miles of territory. They can't be far off now." As Mark spoke, his gaze remained unfocused, darting between the trees. It became chillingly clear. He didn't hope to find the farmers soon. He simply intended to stay in this area, whatever the lethal cost to his group. His obsession had replaced their common sense. Before anyone could argue further, the forest offered its own opinion. A strange, angry noise ripped through the stillness, a guttural sound like the growl of a wolf and the roar of a bear combined, ending in a sharp, almost insect-like click. It was close. Too close.
"I thought that you said we were safe here," Roger hissed, his face draining of color. "You told us we were far away from the mountain." Mark had not merely misled them, he had lied about their proximity to the Green Mountain, trading their safety for his reckless quest. "Don't worry about it," Mark insisted, forcing a confident sneer. "Even if it actually was something, they won't attack us. We have weapons and numbers." He knew venturing this deep was suicidal, but he desperately clung to the belief that the combined bulk of the group and their pathetic iron tools would be enough to deter or intimidate the legendary Icehooks. It was a prayer, not a strategy. The menacing noises did not retreat, they intensified, growing louder and closer, a chaotic predatory chorus ringing in the dark timber. The group instantly became restless, their fear shifting from anxiety to rebellion. "You said that this wouldn't be dangerous," cried Zachary, another villager, his voice cracking with terror. "This clearly doesn't appear to be the case." The others quickly echoed his sentiment, their hands moving not to pitch the camp, but to frantically pack up their meager gear and turn their backs on the mountain. They were ready to run. "Don't do that," Mark shouted, his desperation finally boiling over. "We will find the missing farmers. We are too far from the mountain for a serious attack. They are just trying to scare us. Don't let them." He wasn't pleading for their help anymore. He was pleading for his own sanity, hoping to convince them to stay for just one more terrifying night. He never finished the thought. In a horrifying, lightning-fast blur, a dark shape detached itself from the gloom of the nearest pines. A monstrous hand, massive and clawed, grabbed Mark around the torso with impossible speed and brutal force, yanking him backward, snuffing his startled cry into a wet, sickening gurgle. He was hauled, struggling for a single breath, into the impenetrable shadows of the forest. The other villagers didn't pause, didn't scream, didn't even look back. The image of their leader vanishing was the only consensus they needed. They instantly abandoned the camp and scrambled in a blind, terrified rout toward the safety of the village. Within minutes, the struggle was over. Silence returned, thick and absolute, broken only by the cold wind rustling the branches. All that was left of Mark, a grotesque final punctuation mark on their foolish endeavor, was a hanging body, suspended like a discarded doll from the thick branch of a nearby tree. As the monsters looked at the fleeing group from the shadows, an Icehook named Fireroar was the one who grabbed and executed Mark. Before he died, Fireroar was able to extract crucial information from the villager.
"The raider told me where he found the minerals," said Fireroar. It is far away enough from the mountain to where it would be difficult for us to drive away the raiders if they tried to mine there. Does anyone else know? Asked the leader, who was named Lighting Mine. If the information got out, there could be a mine in our territory within a few weeks. We cannot let them mine here, because if they did, our home will begin to die. The raider died before he could tell me more, said Fireroar, but I don't think so. I have been watching him and his adventures into the forest for some time. He appears to be selfish enough to keep that information to himself, hoping he can take all the money. Will the village retaliate? Asked another ice hook named Woodcloud. We killed one of them. I have followed these raiders for years when they come to the forest, and they have been wanting to attack us for years now. The only reason why they haven't was that they didn't think there would be enough minerals in the forest to justify an attack, replied Fireroar. I fear if the leader told anyone else what he knew, there will be an organized attack against the forest within a month. We have time to prepare, responded Thundermine. I doubt he told anyone, but we should still prepare for an attack regardless. I know a place near the mountain where we can find the materials needed to make dozens of traps a day. After about 2 months of waiting, the ice hooks had laid hundreds of traps in the forest and were confident that Mark didn't tell anyone else what he knew. It's nice that we can relax, said Fireroar happily. We don't get these moments very much. Unfortunately for the ice hooks, a group of villagers appeared, and they not only brought weapons, but also magic. This isn't good, said Fireroar. Our traps won't do anything against magic. The ice hooks fought valiantly against the invaders, and wave after wave of them tried to attack and incapacitate the ones using magic. But it wasn't enough, and they began to fall by the dozens. We can collapse trees to slow them down, responded Fireroar. After we need to retreat to the mountain, they won't chase us there. The remaining ice hooks used explosives to collapse the trees, and as planned, the attack slowed enough to where they could retreat to the mountain. It took the ice hooks a few days to reach the mountain, where they knew they would be safe as the terrain made attacks and mining difficult. We will be here possibly for the rest of our lives, replied Thundermine. I doubt I would live to return to the surrounding forest. Don't think that way, responded Fireroar. I will lead our people back to our home, even if it means my life. I will not rest until we defeat the raiders and reclaim our home. On that, I promise you.
I know, my friend, replied Thundermine. I believe that you will lead our people back to our home. The small band of ice hooks settled into the high caves of the mountain range, their spirits as craggy as the peaks around them. Weeks turned into a grim month. Fireroar spent every waking moment scouting the lower ridges, his face etched with determination and fatigue. He watched the forest, their home, from a distance, seeing the smoke of the raiders' camps rising into the canopy. The invaders weren't just taking minerals, they were systematically logging the ancient trees, turning the green heart of the ice hook's world into an ugly, splintered wasteland. They're not stopping, Thundermine, Fireroar reported one frigid evening, rubbing his massive, calloused hands together for warmth. They're building permanent structures, a fort. Thundermine, whose experience was unmatched in the tribe, merely nodded grimly, sifting through a pouch of raw ore they'd managed to scavenge. A fort means supplies. Supplies mean a supply chain. They will need a clear path up the main trail, and they'll need protection for the caravans. Fireroar paced the cramped cave. That's what I'm counting on. We'll disrupt it. We'll make every journey up that mountain a costly endeavor. We can't fight them head-on, not yet, but we can bleed them dry. He clenched his jaw. Mark won't get away with this, not after he broke his oath to the Iron Pact and brought this calamity down on us. Another 2 months passed. The ice hooks, resilient and clever, had begun to turn the mountainside into a gauntlet. Landslides, expertly triggered rockfalls, and hidden pitfalls marked the invaders' attempts to scale the peaks. Their attacks were successful. The number of supply runs dwindled, and the smoke from the forest fort grew thinner.
Then, a patrol of 3 ice hooks brought back a prisoner, a young, terrified man in a heavy woolen coat, his hands bound with cord. He wasn't one of the villagers they had fought, but a merchant. Fireroar personally oversaw the interrogation. "Why are you here?" Fireroar's voice was a low growl, echoing in the cavern. The merchant whimpered. "I was paid to deliver crates, just crates. I don't know anything about a fort or mining, I swear." "What was in the crates?" Thundermine asked, his voice calmer, more insidious. "Food and medicine for the fever." The word fever hung in the air, sudden and sharp. The ice hooks exchanged horrified glances. The fever was a brutal, infectious blight that had ravaged the nearby human settlements a generation ago, prompting the very isolationist pact that had kept the humans out of the forest. The pact stated that to prevent the spread of infectious disease to the forest's magical creatures, the humans would not enter, and the forest creatures would not attack them. The Iron Pact. Medicine? Fireroar's voice was barely a whisper. "The villagers! They're not here for the minerals, are they?" The merchant sobbed, his head shaking wildly. "No! They ran out of medicine weeks ago. The fever came back. It's hitting the villages hard. Mark, the village leader, he didn't break his oath for minerals. He saw the magical herbs in your deep forest, the ones that grow in the mineral veins. He had to break the pact or watch his entire village die." Fireroar stumbled back, the realization physically stunning him. The minerals were merely a side benefit, a distraction. The leader they knew as Mark, the man they had sworn vengeance against, had not been greedy. He had been desperate. He hadn't told anyone about the mineral wealth because there was none that mattered. He had simply told his desperate people about the magical cure. His pledge to return, his entire vengeful struggle, suddenly felt hollow, built on a mountain of misunderstanding. The ice hooks hadn't been defending their home from a raid. They had been defending a cure from a desperate plague victim. Their clever traps, their attacks on the supply lines, their stubborn, valiant resistance, it hadn't bled the enemy dry. It had successfully blocked the delivery of life-saving medicine. Fireroar looked at Thundermine, the full weight of his promise, to lead his people back, crushing him. "We didn't just lose our home, Thundermine," he whispered, his eyes wide with a new, terrifying grief. "We just sentenced them all to die. We were the real plague." He turned, not towards the forest, but deeper into the silent, unforgiving stone of the mountain. His promise to return and defeat the raiders would now have to be a promise to descend and offer aid to the survivors.